Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Inspired Risk podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Cordova, and today we're going to be chatting with the precious, the angelic Keolani Young. Keolani is a business and performance consultant, a human design specialist, and host of the Great Measure podcast. Keolani has a decade of corporate experience, marketing and sales, and has been translating human design for creative entrepreneurs and business owners for the past 6 years. She helps her clients stop working against themselves and start creating the conditions for their richest work to emerge. Hi, Keolani. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Keolani and I are new friends. We met, I'm like, when did expansion start? We're in a business mastermind together that started 4 months
February?
ago, right? Yeah. So we're coming up to the tail end of it. And I have been so drawn to Keolani and her human design work because I don't have a ton of experience with human design. If you know me, you know I'm an astro girly and that I've spent a lot of time studying astrology, but not much time with human design. And I just really enjoyed Keolani, I'll say to you, the way that you are able to translate and ground these somewhat confusing human design terms and like real world life experience. So thank you for that. Thank you for doing this work. And how did you start working with human design? Can we start there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was during the pandemic when
Mm.
I was out of work. My industry like dried up overnight. I had actually just quit my job and was like starting this new chapter. And then I worked in events marketing and everything changed. And I was like, oh, wait, all these job opportunities that I had and people I was talking to, it all just kind of dried up. And I really didn't know what my next step was. And then my friend, she's like, have you heard about this thing called human design? It's like super weird, super complicated. I don't know. And she sent it to me to check it out. And I just started going down the rabbit hole and I saw it and I was
Mm.
like, what is this? It's very strange looking, but there was something about it that I think just pulled my mind in and I wanted to
Mm.
disprove it. I kind of thought it was bullshit. So I was like, there's no way this is accurate. So I kind of dug deeper and deeper and deeper and was running my chart, other people's charts, and I just kind of never stopped digging deeper into the system and how it can, yeah, I think practically apply to our lives. Like we've had these conversations around
Mm.
astrology and human design, that it's not like we take it in a prescriptive way. We're
Hmm.
getting this confirmation of what's already there. And it
Yeah.
brings our attention to things that maybe we didn't fully understand before.
Yeah.
And so that's why I continue to love it, because I feel like it continues to invite me deeper into myself and also understanding
Mm.
others.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And it's kind of bananas because I guess we've never talked about this, but I also was working in events marketing during the pandemic and
Oh,
was in Vietnam and quit my job, my corporate Vietnamese job doing marketing, and started working from with my friend planning events. And literally within 3 months, like by March 2020, all of the work had dried up because the Vietnamese government was like, no more gatherings, no more celebrations, no more parties. And so that is when I found breathwork and astrology. And so we have a very strange, like, kind of the exact same thing happened to both of us, which is really kind of weird.
parallel experiences for sure. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
parallel. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. How bizarre. To go back though to what you said about human design, you're like, it brings us more deeply into ourselves, which is exactly the way that I feel about astrology. And this podcast I'm so excited to be doing because it is a way for me to connect and share with others, like, how do we connect more deeply with ourselves so that we can make a life that feels really aligned with who we are inside. And sometimes that means doing things that seem unconventional, doing things that seem kind of confusing and not easily understood by others. And what's wild is that you and I, just as we were starting to record this podcast, had one of those experiences. Do you want to tell the audience sort of like what we just went through in your own words?
Sure. I thought it was really cool. So we had talked about recording and like the topic we were going to dig into, and we get on to have a little conversation first before we hit record. And the way you had described it, it's like, it feels like there's a roadblock here. There's something here that's blocking this. And we talked about how we could continue forward. We could record, we could have the conversation, we could dig into the original topic or kind of direction we had chosen. But wouldn't it be so much more interesting to just explore and see what's coming up? You led us through a meditation. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Because in my work, I use systems like human design and I love astrology as a way to bring more awareness to what we're
Mm.
doing, to really land us in the present moment. And I feel like that's what happened for us is we're like, okay, we have this topic, we can totally record and would probably be a good episode, but let's explore if there's something deeper happening here, like a richer conversation. And it kind of led us to where we are now. We're like, wait, maybe the conversation is about exactly this, where we don't always understand why we're hitting resistance or why we're
Yeah.
being redirected. And you could push forward, you could bypass, you could do it anyway. But what if you're missing an opportunity or missing something so much richer that could have happened if you had
Yeah.
just paused for, what was that, like 15 minutes, not even a long time, to explore what was coming up for us and where we were being led in this conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. I've never had this happen to me while like preparing for a podcast episode with a guest, but it's just like Keolani said, we were getting ready to start recording and there was just something in my heart that would not settle. And Keolani, bless her, was so patient as I was kind of talking through it in real time. Like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why I'm feeling this resistance. I don't understand. My mind was really trying to make sense of things and to sort of like logic through the problem. But there wasn't like a mental block. It was like something in my heart space that was not willing or not wanting to move forward with the conversation that we had planned. And it wasn't logical, but instead of, as you said, bypassing or overriding, you were so precious and patient with me. And we both decided, okay, let's just be really present actually with what it is that's coming up. And let's see if we can get some either insight or clarity or information. And we did the little meditation, and the answer did come. Actually, Keolani and I did get a resolution to like why this wasn't the moment to have this conversation. And so that's beautiful in and of itself that there was a resolution, but then also that this opportunity now is to come on here and to be like, oh my God, this happens all the time, actually, in business. This happens all the time as entrepreneurs. This happens all the time as people who are trying to live lives that, as I said in the introduction, like maybe don't always make sense from the outside looking in. And so, Keolani, I would love to have you talk about, as a business owner, like what are some other ways that this type of situation shows up in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this conversation is just so important and valuable to have because as we were talking about this and we chose to stay in the present moment, not force anything forward, let's see what's coming up. Maybe we record today, maybe we don't. We were like very, I think, both in acceptance of whatever direction this goes. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, this actually happens to me and has happened all the time. There'll be moments where maybe I have a podcast topic of my own in mind and I'm going to sit down to record and the words aren't coming out right. And I have forced it in the past where I've been like, "Ugh, I know what to say.
Mm.
I have my outline, I have my bullet points. Like, yeah, let's just get it done, get it launched. It's already been 3 weeks since I posted, like, just do it. And then I listened to the episode back. I'm spending all this time editing and I'm like, I don't even like this episode. Just scrap it. And they end
Yeah.
up record. So it's like there's been moments where I've chosen to just override or launching, a program. I would say, mostly this has come up in my own creative process where my mind has an
Mm.
idea about something that we need to do that should be happening. And over the last, I would say, like 2 years that I've really been trusting, just let my energy lead me, trust my intuition in these moments, don't force it. Something better always comes, or I get more data on why that was happening. Maybe I was
Mm.
just too tired in that moment. Maybe that wasn't the conversation people really needed to have. And
Yeah.
so, this was just so fascinating because it came up in like our collaboration here in this conversation where it's like, whoa, like I'm fine waiting and pushing something to another day in my own work. But with another person, I'm like, oh, I think, years ago, I dealt with a lot of fawning, I would have been like, no, 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 let's just do it because I want to respect this time and let's have the
Yeah.
conversation. And now it just felt so good. It seemed like for both of us to be like, well, let's see. And we don't need to force it.
Mm.
And now we're having the
Mhm.
conversation that's like really fun and alive for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely uncomfortable. Like during the process of trying to sort out sort of like what to do, I could feel my humanness and my ego and my desire to be perceived as like a professional and somebody who has their, their business together, like, and as somebody who has such a great respect for other people's time, I did not want to have to reschedule for what's seemingly no reason,
Mhm.
And I also have learned, just as you have, that those times that I force and the times that I ignore kind of that quiet, maybe illogical whisper are the times that I end up facing or have faced some pretty serious consequences. And I have a whole Substack that I wrote maybe 2 years ago around the idea that rejection is protection, because there are times that I like these really explicit moments in my life where I have overridden my intuition and then gotten really ill or had like a horrible experience. I remember there was a time that I was going to Mexico and my flight was delayed and I was annoyed. So I like tried to go around and arrange like a different connection. And I had a moment where I was like walking over to the airline desk and my intuition was like, don't do this. And I heard that clearly in my mind, don't do this. And I stopped walking and I just sat with that thought for a second, that feeling. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. I should at least ask the airline agent if they can, route me this other way because I want to get to Mexico because I want to start this vacation. And it turned out to be the worst trip of my life. They lost my baggage because she did reroute me. They did do what I wanted to do, but the consequences were, like I said, I lost my baggage. I ended up getting COVID. I was sick the entire time, and it was just like all of these things, the downstream effect that I could never have anticipated. But if I had just listened to that voice that said, "Don't do it," I really believe that like none of that would have happened. And so I have learned that lesson in blood that even when I feel that discomfort of like, but my mind really wants me to do this thing because I quote unquote should, um, that the voice of my intuition now has more of a like an impact than the voice in my mind saying, no, no, but you should, but you should, but you should. And it is hard. Do you feel like you learned lessons like because of really tough consequences, or maybe are you a person who like maybe doesn't need such an extreme outcome before you are able to embody a teaching?
No, definitely when you said like written in blood or like learned it in blood, I'm like, yeah, absolutely same. I used to be like, I would push myself in any situation, anytime, wouldn't listen to my intuition. And what I find really interesting about like those little moments where we have this inner voice or this whisper is that that's
Mm,
really easy to follow. Let's say you're like walking down the street, you're going to grab coffee, and you're like, oh, wait, let me pop in here. That's not a
yes.
thing that most of us are going to encounter resistance. Well, why am I feeling pulled to go into this shop? Like you're just going to go into the shop and maybe something
Mm-hmm.
magical happens there. You find something there for you. But in other moments, it's so hard to follow. Our logical mind like wants to override and be like, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. And there's so much challenge there. And I think it looks different for all of us. But for me, it was always connected to career and business. And I've even talked about with starting my business. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to start my own business. I've worked for startups for years. I know how hard it is. I was like, I don't want to do that. And COVID, as we talked about, I was like, oh, my industry has dried up. I tried to force it. I tried to go back multiple times, multiple jobs. And I was used to being like a top performer, I would say. I was like, I was good at my job. Yeah, I did really well. And it felt like everything had twisted. I was in the upside down where suddenly there was conflict, there were weird dynamics, there was like, I was like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? Like, I'm trying to go back into the corporate world. I've realized, it's too risky right now. I don't want to start my own business. My friends were like, at this point, you know so much about human design. You're doing readings for us. Like, please just go do something, start a TikTok, share this. And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe. But no, I want to be like the corporate girl that I have been and create the safety and stability for myself. So I did. Those were, I think, my biggest experiences enforcing it. And every job, the two jobs I got were worse than the one before it. And I
Yeah.
realized one day I was like sitting on the beach in Venice with my a partner at the time, and I just started bawling. And it was a beautiful sunset, so many families around, kids playing. It was like beautiful, and I was like so visibly just bawling
Mm.
on the beach, and I didn't even really care in that moment. I said something along the lines of, I keep trying to go back through a closed door and it's been so slammed in my face, and I've been trying to like make it happen, and I feel like
Yeah.
life or the universe is just telling me like, no, you stop trying to go backward. You left your job for a reason. You left that. Stop trying
Yeah.
to force it. And that's what actually led me to fully start my business. So it was not this like, I'm so inspired to follow this path and just share this with people. It was coming from, I think, being taught this lesson multiple times before I really heard it and listened, where it was like, you're done with that. You left for a reason. Even if it didn't make sense, you have to trust that and essentially continue down this path, because the past is done for you. So I feel like for me, it's been, I'm Saturn ruled as well, Capricorn rising. So I feel like a lot of times these lessons feel a little bit intense and challenging, but always for my own benefit.
It's so wild how much heartache and grief and sadness and just like agony we could save ourselves if we were more conditioned maybe to trust our intuition from the jump rather than constantly questioning and wanting the. It's interesting because we say safety like as in a corporate job or a specific relationship or um living in a certain city is like more safe than another. But so often that is just our perception telling us that. So often that is just the messaging, really, like from the world saying that, oh, you're much more safe if you have a corporate job. But actually, so many people that I know who work corporate jobs have suffered many, many rounds of layoffs and many, many rounds of toxic workplace environments. And so it's like, is that safety like, is it legitimately a more safe option, or is it just the thing that we have been told over and over and over again? And this is a big part of the reason that I started my own mastermind collab, is because I want to be able to teach people how to start taking risks without suffering the consequences beforehand, how to take the leap of faith, not because the 10 doors have been slammed in your face, but just because you really are truly inspired. And so now I'm wondering, Keolani, like, how do you cultivate your relationship with inspiration? How do you start to like follow the breadcrumbs of things that are exciting to you rather than feeling like you're just being forced and pushed by a set of consequences or circumstances?
Totally. Yeah. What I find interesting about this conversation when we are talking about choosing not to override or bypass, and this is called inspired risk. And I'm like, it's so interesting because I think when we hear the word risk or taking a risk, we might think of doing something really big, launching a business,
Mm.
starting a thing, going for it. But I'm like, actually, what's felt most risky to me is not doing something or like waiting
Mm.
and not pushing forward and not forcing it. Like that feels so much riskier because then it feels like you're in a liminal space. So
Yes.
that's not really answering the question you just asked, but I'm like, it's just so interesting because I don't know how your like energetic rhythms are, but I find that this process for me has been about slowing down and really attuning to the
Yeah.
present moment and what it's showing me, because my default is coming from this push force, checking the rear view mirror. I've got to like keep this momentum going. But then in doing that was actually like forcing continued situations that didn't need to be so traumatic. I think we sometimes experience challenges that we didn't even need to experience.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I'm curious how it is for you. Like, do you feel like you're similar with like the go, 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 the doer productivity type
Mm.
of state?
I think that that is. like you, I was really good at my corporate job, and I loved getting the affirmation and the confirmation, and the, being the like straight A student was something that was really important to me growing up. And so, like you, it's taken some unlearning to recognize that like my value doesn't come from doing. And in fact, part of the collab program, it's a like 3-step methodology, and the first step is listening. And so it's doing exactly what you said, of like slowing down, releasing some of the inputs so that we can get quiet and get still and come into a space where we can actually start to identify and hear or feel our intuition. And so, for so many people who have had success being the doer and just like taking the next step and moving forward, kind of whether or not it felt resonant for them or not, that moment of like needing to pause and needing to listen and needing to wait can be really activating. It can be really uncomfortable to just have to like do nothing and be. And so, has was that your experience when maybe like first left your corporate job and started down this path? Were you uncomfortable in the pause, or did it feel like a relief?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so initially it was uncomfortable, but I think because of the situation we were in as a world, like it impacted things so much where I almost wasn't thinking so much about the experience I was in my job or my career prospects. It was like, whoa, are we all safe and okay? Like, what's actually going on here? So that definitely influenced that experience. But I would say what came up for me at that time is, well, maybe this is what I need to be experiencing because I've worked full time since I was 15. I've never been without a job or multiple jobs. My identity is so connected to my work. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my identity is so connected to what I do, to working, to making something, to be engaged in a capitalist way. Maybe I have this whole other identity or side of myself that I'm going to get to discover in this time where I'm kind of like in the interview process or whatever. And the funny thing is, that's not what happened. I actually realized over time that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to finally figure out who I am outside of work. And the path that led me down was actually discovering how important work is to me because it's about making a contribution. And of course, I was learning about my human design, and I'm a generator type. And there's this saying around like generators are here to work and build. And I was like, bullshit. But now I kind of have more context for it's about creation. It's about having this sacral energy and life force to create and build something. So that experience reshaped how I view work. I built a new relationship with work. It was very scary. This wasn't like a chill process. There were many times where I'm like, okay, got to pull for my 401k to like pay rent in LA. It was a very messy process, but I realized how important work is to me that almost like I think I had to become an entrepreneur because I needed to contribute something to the world that like felt like it mattered. And when it does, my energy is so engaged that it eliminates doubts. So it was cool to see that because I really thought something different would happen. And then I realized so much of my satisfaction is connected to the work I do and how I spend my week. And I even thought, I've always seen Monday through Friday as like being so corporate coded. Maybe my Mondays will be something totally different. And I'm like, I wake up Monday ready to go. We're actually recording this on a holiday. And I'm like, I'm working today. I don't know. It's just funny. I'm like, I think I am really someone who's here to like create and build in that way. And it redefining that for myself felt very empowering to be like, no, actually, I do love to work. I do actually keep a kind of similar schedule to my career before, just fewer hours and more on my own terms, but it feels really, really, really good. And there
Mm-hmm.
is a decent amount of slowness and waiting and paying attention and seeing what's emerging. And it feels like I'm being led versus I'm forcing something and like forcing myself to show up and do it. Even in this recording, I feel like we allowed ourselves to just be led by the greater conversation that needed to be had. And so it's in these little micro moments, I think, that we get to practice what this looks like for ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
you get to see in real time, like those subtle shifts. And yeah, I think that's what really ultimately changed my life.
Mm. That's so beautiful. I'm like, it is the micro moments that really make all of the difference, because that is how you learn, in a small stakes way, that actually listening to your intuition, following your creative impulse, listening to the quiet whisper, like, is okay, is in the the small moments first, and then you sort of build the musculature to be able to take maybe a bigger leap of faith when it presents itself. But it's amazing the way that you can make a life that you actually really love and that actually gives you so much like soul purpose when you just start taking these like little baby steps in the direction that you want to go. And I don't know, I was looking at your chart um, this morning before we got on the recording, just because I'm always curious and nosy. And so I was looking at your astrology chart, and you have Jupiter in Virgo. And I feel like taking small baby steps in order to like experience a larger, like more beautiful outcome is very Jupiter and Virgo coded. And so I just love that you brought that medicine to this conversation here, because I think all the time people are like standing on the edge of a cliff and are like, I'm too scared to jump. I'm too scared to jump. I'm too scared to jump. But it's like, maybe you don't have to jump. Maybe you just have to like climb down to the second little ledge and then like climb down to the little ledge beneath that. And you'll eventually get to exactly where you need to be. And so, yeah, I know that it's important for somebody out there to remember, like, it doesn't always have to be terrifying. It can just be a little subtle shift in your day.
Yeah, like the image that comes up to me is like jumping off a cliff into the water. I'm like, I am not someone who's jumping off the cliff or off the boat into the water. My friends do, other people do. I'm like, no, I'm making my way down and I'm going to step into the ocean. I'm still in the water. I'm fully submerged, but I'm like, I feel like, I used to have these ideas of what courage and bravery looked like. And maybe like my fullest self is someone who jumps off the cliff. And I'm like, no, truthfully, I just like don't like being underwater. I'm wearing contacts. Like it's just not my process. I move slowly and it feels better for me. It feels safer for me. And maybe one day I'll be like, guess what, Elizabeth? I'm actually jumping off a cliff. But I don't see that for myself. And that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
There's not like one model and one way of doing it. And
yeah.
but we still sometimes end up in the same place where we're really immersed in the experience, but we don't have to like force it. And I know,
Mhm.
in different signs, I'm a Pisces, as well. So maybe if I was like an Aries or Sag or, had all this fire energy in my chart, which I really don't have, I would approach it differently. But that's why I love these systems as well, because it's just giving us context for what's already there a lot of the time. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that is me. I can just continue to follow that and not feel like my fullest self or my like most successful self involves transforming into a totally different kind of person.
100%. A big thing I think about a lot is like living my life kind of the way that I go to yin yoga, like a yin yoga class. Like, I'm just going to get to a slightly uncomfortable edge and I'm going to just ease into it, because I
Mm.
feel like I have, like we were talking about before, I've forced so many things and I've really like violated my own boundaries, and I've kind of violated my own self with some of the ways that I have treated myself in the past. And I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live my life really treating myself with kindness and accountability. It's not one or the other. And so let me identify where I start to get a little bit uncomfortable, where I'm really at the edge of my comfort zone, and then call in some tools or call in some support. It's like putting up a bolster in a yin yoga class, where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to lean into this and like gently stretch, gently expand, and then feel good, and not feel like I'm injuring myself along the process. And so I don't know necessarily where to take that, except to say it is important, I think, for everyone to kind of identify, how is it that you like to expand into the next level of your life? Are you somebody who jumps off the cliff, or are you somebody who, is really happy to just like trek down the steps and dip your toes in and then be immersed in that way?
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the respect and honoring your own limits and boundaries, because that's been a big thing. I know there's a lot of talk about boundaries and what we're available for and what we're not. But I think that for me, the most impactful thing was actually setting them with myself and not bypassing or overriding when I could. We all come into the world, grow up with different experiences. And for me, that was something when I started to realize that how quick I am to override what's comfortable for me, what I'm open to. Embracing my own sensitivity was really, really powerful. Like, and that could look like being invited to do something. Normally I'd be like, yeah, 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 Saturday, cool, sounds good. And I started saying, and this is like when I was really in my human design experiment with emotional authority and knowing, okay, maybe wait, give it more time for making decisions. It feels uncomfortable, but I'm going to say, can I sleep on it and let you know? And I'm like, I know I'm going to say yes. I don't even know why I'm saying this right now. But it really started to demonstrate my own self respect to myself, to my
Yeah.
inner child, all my parts, and be like, wait, no, we can really take care of us. I
Mm-hmm.
respect myself. I'm demonstrating that. I'm almost proving to my mind that we can take steps forward and not risk being hurt again or burnt out or whatever that looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say as a business owner, that's been probably one of the most transformational things that has led to compounding success is building
Mm-hmm.
slowly one step at a time. And in that process, giving myself that permission to wait, to not make the decision right away, to not force something, because for me, it is very important to be like, it's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you're more sensitive. Like you can kind of test that, flex that muscle, like you were saying, and that muscle gets stronger over time to where we can hop on a call and have like a 10-minute conversation about, yeah, maybe this isn't the right thing and it's not really a big deal. And then, okay, great. Now we're on to the next thing. Before, I think a few years ago, that would have been, I would have been like, wait, what's happening? I don't understand this. And so it does get like this strong muscle over time where maybe you're launching a program or you're launching a podcast or doing something big for the first time. When you have built that muscle, it's so much easier where you're almost not thinking about it as much. You're just like, oh, I feel like I need to wait, or maybe I need to shift my approach. Okay, I'm just going to go take a shower or make myself food. I'm not going to like think about it so much and over strategize, because I used to really
Mm-hmm.
over strategize everything.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000%. I so relate. I think launching this podcast really taught me a lot about my own ability to create and to follow through, and really created a new cellular memory, as our business coach Maya likes to say. And once you have that experience of creating a new cellular memory for yourself, a way that you show yourself, I can operate differently and still have the outcome that I desire, then that is when I think also the compounding effects start to come through. Is you're like, okay, so now I get to double down on my own process. Now I get to double down on my own permission slip to be myself and continue to build a business that fits the life that I want to have, rather than having to contort myself and be uncomfortable. That I think is, I get so worked up about this because I'm like, I want to be nicer to myself than I ever experienced in the corporate world. You know, there aren't the same rules and standards. And so unlearning that and being able to shift the way that I operate just on my own with myself and still have the outcomes that I've set for myself has been the most just like enlivening experience. And it makes me so excited to continue running my business and to continue growing and to continue looking for ways that I can like accomplish my own dreams, because I'm like, the journey gets to be just as nice as like the destination. And if I'm not an entrepreneur like for that reason, then what reason is there for me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the joke about you leave a 9 to 5 to work 24 hours for yourself. And I'm like, well, it's kind of true. I mean, you are working, doing a lot of different jobs, and it does require a lot of work, but it's a totally different thing when you're engaging in
Yeah.
your own thing. It does sometimes feel like you're playing whack-a-mole, you're like jumping around between different jobs. And of course, there's systems that really eliminate a lot of that overwhelm from switching context too often. But yeah, I think showing yourself this can feel good, it doesn't actually have to. And I think this is really about understanding your baseline, your default
Mm.
mode. Like for me as a doer, as like the ultimate, can force things through, have tenacity and perseverance, like I have so much grit and resilience that I can tap into that and use it as a resource. And then
Yeah.
I end up feeling like pretty miserable because I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just basically tapping into this like source of power to follow through and force something, or almost like be in battle. That's kind of what it feels like. I'm like, wait, I
Hmm.
can actually access a different source of energy of
Yeah.
creative energy, especially that's more connected to joy or expansion, or I'm so excited to see this come forth and become what it is. It's a totally different fuel source. So, I think for
Mm.
anyone listening, it could be interesting to explore like what is your default that you kind of tap into in moments of overwhelm or stress? Like, what's the thing you lean on? Is there a way to explore a different mode? Because for some people,
Mhm.
forcing it is not their default. Maybe they do, or like give themselves this permission to, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to totally
Mhm.
disengage and
Yeah.
avoid the thing. And it becomes a little bit avoidant. And then you're not getting to make those discoveries in the process where you're like, wow, I'm such an amazing person and I'm continuing to expand and grow and flex these different muscles and strengthen that and build it over time.
Yeah.
No one gets on a stage to speak for the first time and is like, I'm the best public speaker. People always say like it takes time and repetition and learning and growth. And I think as business owners, we're often doing this in a way that feels more public because we're putting
Mhm.
things out into the world from content to offers and we're seeing real time feedback. So it's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And the more we can make that feel good and spacious and expansive for ourselves, I feel like we actually do go so much further, so much
Yeah.
faster when we really are paying attention to how we feel in every moment and auditing, what we kind of lean on in default moments of stress and overwhelm.
Yeah. That's a really lovely invitation for anybody listening. What is your default, and how is it both supporting you and then maybe getting in the way at times, because we all have those just like programs running in the background that can be really, have gotten us this far in life. So like they probably are working to some degree, but then to also sit with and evaluate and, as you said, audit what is it that is maybe also like needing to be worked through or worked on, so that I can feel even better about the way that I'm making forward progress, is just a beautiful invitation and reflection. And I'm also curious about the way that you resource yourself, because like you said, this tenacity, I feel like I have that as well, and can burn through that pretty quickly if I so choose. And so I've had to be really conscientious about the ways that I also fill up my cup. How do I continue to maintain the energy? And I'm curious what maybe some of those practices are for you.
Yeah, so a big one for me, this was, I think, in the first year or so of my business. I remember talking to one of my friends and talking about how I've always been motivated by pressure and fear, not wanting to be poor again, not wanting to be unstable, whatever. I'm going to try moving from love and joy and like, yeah, I'm going to create from that place. And I ended up like not creating content for 6 months, like not really doing much of anything because it wasn't just this instant shift. I was like,
Sure.
oh shit, I'm really rewiring something here, like rewiring the default mode. So it took more time than I think it needs to take anyone else. The thing that really shifted things for me was thinking about the energy of creation and how I'm already using that in so many other areas of my life. Like I know in business, I tend to force things or push myself too hard, or even my understanding of my own design isn't always leading me to make a different choice. I'm like, okay, great. Yeah, that's
Mm.
great. I'm emotional authority, but yeah, I'm still going to make this decision in this moment. I thought about, okay, if I want to tap into this energy, this different fuel source, where am I already doing that in my life? I love cooking. I love baking. I love having people over and like hosting little dinners and making homemade bread and
Mm.
butter. And like, I making homemade butter is inefficient. I honestly can spend less money and get probably better tasting butter by going to a market and just getting like a great French butter. Like I'm not saving money. It's not even like that much better. I'm
Yeah.
doing it because there's something I'm enjoying about the making of it and having it in my own wax paper. It's just like my hands are really involved in this. Got
Yes.
into gardening for a moment. Gardening, not really my thing, not my expertise. It's really not. Horseback riding though, love horseback riding. I looked at like all of my gear that's just covered in like dirt and horsehair and it's just like a mess. I'm like, okay, there's so many areas of my life where I'm already engaging in creativity or doing things that may not even be for any reason other than joy. Can
Mm.
I bring that energy into my work? Can I play with that the same way I would make dinner for myself and my partner? And I'm just like, oh, let me do a little bit more of this seasoning. Let me do a little bit of that. I'm not worrying about presenting this to like a table of chefs. That's how I was approaching my work. I'm like, at the table of chefs, here's my thing. I hope I get good feedback.
Mhm.
I really started
Yeah.
to play with like, what if I just created, didn't need it to be perfect, that's really what started to shift things for me. It started to feel a lot more fun. And I gave it more time because I would just remember, I just planted jasmine. I'm not expecting those flowers to bloom in a week. Why am I expecting that from myself or my own business? So having those daily cues from cooking to growing flowers to horseback riding, I started to bring that same perspective into my work. And I think it really, now I don't even really think about that anymore. It's just kind of a natural mode of, do I feel like I'm in this energy of creation? Does this feel good to me? Do I feel like I'm building something? Is my energy engaged? If it's not, that's a signal to pay attention to, and I can just discover what that is.
Hmm. I love the butter example. Like I really do because you're right. It's so true that this we have this idea that like everything that we create needs to have this like extrinsic value, that there has to be some, I don't know, like rational reason for creating it. And yet, as we've kind of been talking about, it's like the journey and the process of like having your hands in the butter and doing the squeezing and remembering you're a human being with all of these sensory systems that are online, and that there's so much joy that comes from presenting something that you have created to the people that you love. There's like nothing more delicious than that. And so it's a really beautiful parallel to the type of work that you're doing, especially if you have the privilege of being an entrepreneur and having a say in the work that you're putting out. Like it should feel like that delicious presentation to people that you love. And so I'm excited to see what other little recipes you have cooking up. I love the seasoning analogy. I'm like, oh, I'm going to use that when I'm next time I'm like putting together a flyer or something for one of my events. I'm like, ooh, a little seasoning, a little sparkle. Let's add some of that and lower the stakes. That's really like a
Yes.
big takeaway that I'm getting from this conversation with you. And it's like we're not presenting at the end of Top Chef. You know, this isn't like a life or death $1 million anything that we're putting out. It's literally just like presenting a meal to a group of people who love us. And so, can we come with that energy every time we launch something so that it doesn't feel so, I don't know, like serious? It doesn't have to be that
Yes.
way.
Yeah, I love the way you reflect things and can like distill like a takeaway from that. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really enjoy that. You're very good at that. And yeah, I think that's a really great way of putting it, where like it doesn't have to feel so serious because yeah, that is definitely my default mode. Pushing, serious, I can do it. I have the perseverance. It's so different to approach it from this more playful way. Like, wait, what if I don't overcorrect too much, but I'm going to try overcorrecting to find a nice middle ground there where I
Yeah.
am moving from what feels like now when I create offers or content or launch things is like, I've enjoyed making this. I really like this. If you don't like the flavor of this dish, I mean, it's kind of fine because I feel really connected to it. I used to put things out because I felt like this is valuable or this is good. If people didn't like it, it was like, well, I did that for you. So I'm almost having this expectation of, wait, I wanted
Yeah.
you to like this. I made this for you. It's not even for me.
Yeah.
Now moving more from like inward and like what feels really good for me or what I would love to experience. It doesn't have this pressure or expectation of other people receiving it a certain way, which means it's more honest.
Mm.
The boundaries are clear. It's not pressuring anyone or creating this expectation of people to respond to it in a certain way. It's so
Yeah,
much more clean and the energy is so much more present. And I do think people can feel that. You know,
for
we can
sure.
feel when something is maybe a little bit off or when something has been forced or when there's this pressure. And when I enter into people's businesses or their worlds, I love to feel that energy of creation and aliveness where it's not about perfection. It's about like they really feel connected to what they're doing. That feels really, really, really juicy to
Yeah.
dig into to continue with the meal and cooking analogy.
Yeah. It's the visual that's coming to mind is almost like a set of columns. And it's like there are certain columns like in a coliseum that are like in integrity and can really sort of just like stand alone and be presented and have people, I don't know, walk around and admire and engage. And then there are other ones that are maybe like a little crumbly and a little bit like, hey, I need you to like patch me up and fix me and like give me something. And it does, it feels like a very different energy when something is created from that place of solid integrity and assuredness, and when something is created from a place of like expectation and neediness and a desire for I don't know, the creator's uh I was gonna say holes to be filled. Like, I don't want that.
Incredible. Leave it. Leave that in.
So yeah, if you need your holes to be filled, like maybe work on your offer. We'll see. The other thing I was thinking about was when you do create from a place of just like pleasing yourself, there's so much delight and surprise that gets to come from that. You get to be, when you're really working with your intuition and you're really working with your inner muse or creative genius or whatever, you get to just like play and experiment, which is just what you were talking about. And then you get to have your own self be surprised by what comes out. And it is such an exciting experience to create in that way, because you're like, oh my gosh, I just added this little seasoning, this little ground pepper from, this random shop that I was in, and the flavor is so much richer and it's so much more delicious than I could have even anticipated. And that keeps me coming back and committed to working in this way, because like I said, I want the journey to be just as fun as the destination. And I love to surprise myself. I love to be surprised by my own creative whims, maybe I'll say. Does that
Yeah.
happen to you?
Yeah, I love that also because when you're talking about like adding in a little seasoning, a little something of this, that feels very different than overstuffing something
Mm,
to add more value, to give our mind proof of its value. It's like
mm,
such a different energy to approach it with, ooh, maybe a little something of this, actually, like maybe add this in here. And this is something I've noticed now in this stage of my work where I'm really allowing the work to shape me as I'm shaping it. I'm like, as I'm creating it, it's creating me, it's creating itself. When we put something out into the world, at that point where we're relinquishing control over how it's perceived and how people use it or whatever. And there's something really beautiful about, in the same way you might cook like a stew that's like on the stove for like 8 hours and you're like, let me try it after it's had time to simmer. Let me see what it is now. What does it need at this stage? I think we approach our work in a very similar way, whether it's a podcast we're, doing, or an offer, or a new content series. It's based on that feedback and tasting it and being like, oh, what is it becoming and how can I support it in that? That feels so much richer than trying to know in advance. I don't know if it's possible to know in advance. It's certainly not in my work. I can't know where it's going, but I can follow if you've seen Donnie Darko, he has that like, channel of energy outside of his body,
mm.
like leading him along, and he's following this. I'm like, that's how it feels for me in my work, is I'm getting to discover what this wants to be. And I am the vessel or just the person who's like making it, create it, and bringing it into the world.
Yeah.
So, and I think for anyone who struggles with overworking or over delivering, over giving, because our brain is searching for concrete value and like, what is the takeaway? What are people going to get from this? Playing with that energy of like, what if you're just seasoning it and tasting it and letting it become
Mm,
what it wants to be, feels so much more expansive, and it takes the pressure off of you because it's not like it's all coming from you. It's being
yeah.
engaged with and created by the other people who are receiving it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That is literally why my program is called Collab, because it is a collaboration between you and your audience and your creative source. And it's all just seasoning and tasting and feedback. And so I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up our conversation. That was delicious and juicy and so well seasoned. Thank you, Keolani, for coming on. I would love for you to share what's happening in your world next. How can people work with you? Obviously, they can listen to your podcast, Great Measure, but where else can they find bits and pieces of you?
Yeah, I mean, first, I just loved this conversation so much. It was a cool
Mm.
experience to have where we just explored what really wanted to come through. And so this is so fun. And yes, so I have the Great Measure podcast. I'm also creating a little bit more on Instagram. I'm mostly in stories at Keolani Young, and I'm in the launch right now of a program called Emergence, which is the program that dropped in last year. And I realized it wasn't the right timing, and I waited, and kind of like we're talking about in this conversation, let it become what it wants to be and let it like make its way into the world at the right time. So I'm launching it right now in a way that feels more spacious and relaxed than I think anything I've ever done. So
Mm,
building that evidence and proof for myself that creation and even launching and selling and marketing can feel really good, can feel really
mm.
juicy and expansive. And so I'm just loving where I'm at right now. It's launching June 8th and so excited to see what it wants to become because it's the first round. And so it's a big space of self trust as well to retire some of my other offers and just go all in on this and see what it wants to be. And
Mm.
so, if this conversation has resonated, if this process of creating from the inside out resonates with people, they can go learn more about Emergence and see what it's all about.
That's amazing. And is it just for people who have human design experience? Like, is that an important component? Is to know your human design, or is it open to anybody?
It's open to anyone. It's focused towards business owners. So there are some people who they actually don't know their design and they're like, I'm just going to join because I kind of want to see what it's all about. We do use
Cool.
human design as a system to guide the creative work, but
Okay.
not in a prescriptive way. So the
Okay.
way I like to think of it is someone could come in and not even ever see their chart and receive everything they need from it. Because I know their chart. I don't know how you are with
Mhm.
astrology. I see someone's
Mhm.
chart and it's
Yeah.
like memorized and then I
Yeah.
just guide them from that in the calls. So yeah, it's used as a map and a system to support the emergence of their creative work.
I love it. To support the emergence of their creative work. So good. Okay. Well, thank you, my sweet friends, for listening. That is our show for today. If you are keen to hear more conversations with people living radically free lives, I invite you to like and subscribe to the show anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We are on YouTube at Eliza Gets Into It, ELIZAGETS. INTUIT. I had a brain melt right there. Eliza Gets Into It. And I will see you on the internet. Besos, besos, besos. Have a beautiful rest of your day, friends.